Hello, First Assembly. Welcome to another Wednesday night session of Parenting on Purpose. I'm glad you're joining in, part of this. I hope it's been helpful and inspiring, and I'm thankful again for you to be part of this. We are on session number 7 as part of this series, and session number 7 is part 3 of the topic we were covering on helping our kids to display love to the world by respect, honor, kindness, those kinds of things. And so, parenting on purpose that the generations to come will know. Let's take a little inventory of the warehouse. Remember the illustration from a couple sessions ago, that our children's hearts are like a warehouse. And so, what is being put in there? What have you put there? What are you expecting? Think of are your children characterized by acts of kindness towards others? If not, no reason to shame yourself here, but I hope I'm giving you inspiration and some ways for you to start that process. Number 2, we are surrounded by people, needs, endless opportunities to respond. How often do you respond? How often do your kids see you respond? How often do you include them in your response? If you have this idea to do something kind for a neighbor, for some need in the community, please involve your kids. Please say, this is one of those things we should be doing as a believer. I tend to not go with, God led me to do this, because I feel like as believers in this world, He's already told us to do these kinds of things. And so I guess maybe that's a personal admittance to you when someone says, I saw someone dying and bleeding on the side of the road and God told me I should do something about it. Of course, I'm being sarcastic there. But we're believers in this world. We have choices. We have freedom and we have a responsibility to respond. So when you see needs, you don't have to be called by God to meet needs, please. And don't raise your kids to think that they have to be called to meet the needs around them. We just do it. It has to be part of our lifestyle. It has to be on our heart. So have a fresh start. And again, I'm giving you ideas. You can start now. Think about just the simple things of maybe teaching them to push in their chair when they leave the table, because if they don't, someone else has to do it, right? What about honoring guests in your home by teaching your children to stand, go to the person, shake their hand, and look them in the eye? This was one of those things that when our kids may have been even a little, especially one, was more prone to shyness, like we're not going to allow shyness to be an excuse for rudeness. And there are people in maybe the counseling profession and other professions who say, that's pretty harsh for a child to force a child. I'm not saying force them to go kiss an aunt they don't want to kiss. I'm not saying those kind of things. But I am saying to stand and show the honor and dignity to a human being that they deserve. To stand, shake their hand, look them in the eye. Years later, I took my truck to a shop to be worked on. It was a shop that my son David had told me about. And when I went in there and introduced myself, the man was like, oh, "You're David's dad, man. He is such an amazing young man." And there are other people in the shop there with him. He goes, "Man, his son bought his." He starts bragging about things I won't cover right now. But he says his son will look you in the eye, shake your hand, and smile and show you respect. And I'm like, the fact that it's on such short supply in this world that my son doing that made him stand out is maybe the sad side of this. But the pride in me is that that man felt honored and respected by David. And David being in his maybe late teens, early 20s to display this kind of thing. So if you want to raise an adult that does those kind of things, those seeds have to be planted now. Don't write it off. Don't say, well, they'll learn it later. Don't say, well, they're really shy, or those kinds of excuses you could make for your child. Teach them that now. Equip them, give them that tool, put into their spiritual toolbox a love for others that is reflected on how they greet them. Maybe another thing to think about is how do your children respect others? I mean, not respect. How do they address others? And I am not saying it's a biblical mandate to use titles, but it often does show a level of respect and honor that is, again, in short supply in our world. Mr. or Mrs., titles like that, or pastor, whatever titles there might be, coach, I don't know. Using titles often helps a child to give respect and understand that there's an authority here. But it often will show that person, too, a glimpse of honor and respect that maybe they don't always see. Sometimes it does backfire. I remember being in a Home Depot when my kids were young, and my two boys were with me, and this man helped. He's a Home Depot employee, and I said, "Sir, you've been so kind to us. It's so nice of you. I can't thank you enough." And what is your name? And he tells me his first name. I said, "No, what is your last name? I'd like my sons to know." And he said, "Why?" I said, "Well, because they have been taught to say Mr. and just to honor that you're older than them." And he said, "Oh, that's stupid." So this is a man in his 70s, and I thought somebody's going to be proud of the fact that things that were typical in his generation that we're instilling them in our kids, and so we just kind of worked around that. He never did tell me his last name, but it was still a funny story and an interesting lesson for my sons. What about giving up their seats? I talk about older people, or what about just moving over, moving over and letting someone, creating space for them. How about creating work for other people or not creating work for other people? I'm moving down on just some quick ideas here. Like, for example, littering or putting things. Let's say you're in Walmart and you've decided that there's some items you don't want. And you can just stick them anywhere on any shelf. That would be fine. No police is going to come after you. They're not going to look on the cameras and say, "Oh, look, that person put something back." But now, it is a big problem when people stick meat in a place that's not refrigerated. I've seen that happen, and they've just basically wasted Walmart's product. But why create more work for other people? As a believer in this world, do not interpret this as legalism. Don't interpret this as something I'm adding to the Bible that you should not put stuff on random shelves of Walmart. But I'm saying, as a believer in this world, I should do my best to not create work for other people. Because I'm supposed to be a servant in this world. So why not just go put the stuff back? Again, I'm not saying it's a sin, but putting it back is a great example to your kids, a great example that you're not going to just casually create work for other people. And that's just one example that came to mind. And there are probably many others regards to littering or picking up litter when you walk past it. Why not pick it up? Creating work for other people, we shouldn't be characterized by that. What about putting ourselves before others? Do your kids watch you cut in line? Because when you cut in line, you are putting yourself before a lot of other people. Is that something a Christian should be characterized by? Again, you can interpret that and say, "Wow, he's being really legalistic." No, I'm talking about real life situations here where we have an opportunity to reflect a sense of otherness and care and love and respect for others. But if I'm cutting in line, I'm not respecting the people behind me. I just made myself more important than them, or my schedule more important. And maybe whether that's in traffic or in person. But this idea, I wanted to just give you a quick idea of some of the needs that are around us that you and your kids could respond to together. Our next item, respect for siblings and peers. We've talked about respect for God, respect for authority, respect for parents, respect for age. What about respect for siblings and peers? I said in a previous session, it's just been mind-boggling for me, or at least it was at first, to see siblings fight. As an only child, I wanted siblings. I feel deprived that I didn't have siblings. I would have loved to have them. And I guess maybe it's kind of a pie in the sky idea that I would have never fought with them. That's, I know that's not true. That's not real. But I was just like, why are you fighting with your siblings? You should be grateful to have them. I would have done anything to have them. But the truth is, we are all sinful creatures. All right. When I talk about siblings and peers, I'm really saying, I could just say peers, and because the siblings are included in that. A peer is one of the same age or dignity. Your child's peers are those who have common association, brothers, sisters, friends, classmates, all of those. And to have a kind of love and respect for kids, other kids, again, that you could foster this, that you could put this in their heart. One of the things that when I was a children's pastor, and early when Daniela, my oldest, was in our kids' church, even at a young age, said, will you help me out, and will you look for the kids who come in and don't have a friend and don't have anyone to sit by, and will you get your friends to get up and go over with them? And to watch her take that example and take that lead, to just take that idea and run with it, to have a love and respect. I've heard stories of kids that will do wonderful things as gestures to the down and outers, to the outcasts of their own peer group. I'll mention a couple of those in a moment. How do you show respect and honor and honesty to your peers? Well, one of them is you don't talk negatively about them. You don't give false testimony against your neighbor, as the Exodus 20:16 included there in the Ten Commandments. Philippians 2:3, this is a great passage that if you're ever going to do a family shield or a list of family identities, Philippians 2, the couple of verses at the beginning of that chapter are wonderful. Esteem and regard others higher than yourself. Look to the needs of others before your own, Paul also said. In Colossians, forbearing with one another, that your kids would be characterized, that our kids would be characterized by esteeming and caring about others in their peer group, and living honestly before them, not gossiping. And I know it's a dog eat dog world out there, and I know when they go to school, and there are kids there that are not of this mind at all, and bullies that are hurtful. Of course, one of the things we can teach our kids is that bullies are people that are hurt on the inside and trying to make up for it on the outside. But there are so many out there that are filled with unkindness and meanness, and I get that. But even with those kids, that you could say to your children, it doesn't excuse you from being kind. I want you to understand that you have my permission to stick up for yourself. Yes, that's a different topic, different day. But you can't have bitterness in your heart, and you can't go gossip about that person, because that's not okay. That's not acceptable. That's not what we do. Do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against one of your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord, from Leviticus. Romans 13:9, whatever other commandment there may be, it is summed up in this: love your neighbor as yourself. That our kids would be characterized by loving others, caring for others. And let's say your kids go to a public school, and there's a lot of different personalities, a lot of different things that go on, and that it's hard. Maybe your child is hard for them to have friends. But what would Jesus do in this situation? Jesus would seek out the ones who are alone, the ones dealing with loneliness, the outcasts, maybe even the ones that have been made fun of and they don't even try anymore. That our kids would be the ones to go and sit with them, to put that in their heart. And are your kids going to naturally have this idea? Maybe they've heard something at church, or that maybe just the presence of God in their lives, they've already thought of that. But these are the kinds of things that we have to have those conversations with them. Jesus said to love God with all your heart, with all your understanding, with all your strength, with your neighbor as yourself. We've seen this passage before. We went over it before when Jesus said it. Loving God and loving others, they go hand in hand, these two greatest commandments. The key, John Maxwell said, the key to relating to others is putting yourself in someone else's place instead of putting them in their place. There is a time, there is an occasion, there is an appropriateness for our kids to stand up for themselves. If you kind of wrestle with that, and it's a topic I'm not going to go over in great detail. If you have a son, especially, read the book called Wild at Heart. That was a book that really helped me understand and really help my perspective on raising boys, and actually applies to raising girls to be able to defend themselves. Okay, so the key to relating others is putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Think about that. That's called empathy. So what does loving your neighbor look like for your child? That you're not going to tolerate unkind speech in their lives. You're not going to tolerate it at home with their siblings, so therefore it's not going to be tolerated outside either. It's not going to go with them. And this is something to be diligent about as a parent. There's a point where we say work it out amongst yourselves, but if there is unkind speech and name calling, that is not okay in a family that's supposed to be built on love and kindness. Absolutely not. And that has to be dealt with however you choose to deal with it, but please don't let it go. Don't let that fester. Don't let it grow. Don't let it be like families that I've seen where they're just brutal with how unkind they are to each other. Now, I understand playful sarcasm and things like that, but I'm talking about a different level of unkind speech. Because if they're allowed to do it to their siblings, they're going to be doing it with their peers outside of the family as well. Number 2, encourage them to be happy when something good happens to a sibling. One of the traps that you can easily fall into as a parent is to try to make everything even. Try to make everything that no one ever feels left out. But the truth is, life's not that way, and kids need to understand that we're going to celebrate all of you. We're going to celebrate each of you. And on your birthday, I'm not giving a present to each of your brothers and sisters just so that they feel good, because it's your birthday. And things happen in this world, and sometimes people have and some people don't. And I'm not going to try to gloss over that and give them a false picture of life. And so I am also not going to ignore when good things happen to a sibling, and I'm not going to just celebrate with that sibling, but let's celebrate together. Hey, did you know your brother did this? Did you know your sister got this grade? Or whatever it is. 3, teach your children empathy. The idea of taking the time to think, what must it be like to be that person, or what might be bothering them today, or the way they're acting, something must be bothering them, to have a care for others. And this can only happen in a child who is loved and cared for, a child who has a secure attachment to a loving adult. So let's think broader, let's think deeper, I guess. Are you emotionally attached with your child? Do you have a relationship with them? Do you foster that relationship? Do you foster it by having them come up on your lap, or putting your arm around them, or reading a book, or whatever those kinds of things? Are you doing the things that foster emotional attachment? Because the more a child feels that, the more they're able to show empathy to others, and because they have a security in themselves. Number 4, teach your children that they are each other's lifelong friends. When you think of siblings, friends are going to come and go. I've heard it said that friends are like waiters and waitresses in a restaurant. They come and go in your life, and to never be seen again. And I'm like, that is so sad. But when it comes to siblings, there's going to be a lifelong connection there. So if it's a lifelong connection, you should be lifelong friends. 5, teach and help them to look for outcasts, unfriended, and newcomers, as I said earlier. Look for the kids who sit alone, the kids who are picked last at game time. I've heard a story where a child was one of the captains at recess to pick teams to play kickball, and the first person they picked was the kid who's usually picked last, and they went on their way from there. Think about what that does in their heart. I picked the outcasts. I didn't care about winning. I helped that child feel great about even being here, and let them know that I'm going to be their friend, and that we would even give our kids those kinds of ideas. Maybe they're not going to think of that in the moment, but if we foster it enough and facilitate it enough in their hearts that they would be that type of child. Or what about, as you see in the picture, is your child more prone to join a group of hecklers that are making fun of another kid across the way? Or do they have the strength to leave that group and go be a friend to that child? Or would they walk up to this situation, maybe not even being part of it originally? Which group are they, or what are they going to choose? To go be a friend to the one who's being made fun of and risking being made fun of themselves, or to go join the group? Those are the types of scenarios that we have to talk with our kids about, talk through it with them to prepare them for these kinds of moments that will come up in life. Not just hope that they'll happen and respond well. Put yourself in their shoes. There might just be more to the story than you realize. God help all of us to look at people this way. Let us look at even them, the angriest people, that there's something going on, and it doesn't let them off the hook. It doesn't give them an excuse to be rude and cause pain in other people's lives. I understand that, but yet there's usually something behind the scenes in helping our kids to understand that. Our next topic is respect for differences. There's a list of verses here, and I'm not going to read all of them to you, but all of them point to God not having partiality. Whether it's partiality between Jews and Gentiles, or partiality with the entire world of people, all humanity, partiality that we as followers of him should look to serving everyone, to looking to the needs of others, not others. It's not a selective process, but looking to others outside of ourselves. James says, if you show favoritism, you sin. I mean, there's so much going on in our world that really, like I've said before, creates some areas that we think are gray areas. But God doesn't have partiality at all. And this has to be ingrained in the lives of our kids, because I think we say it. I know we say it. But if we take a hard look at our perspectives, a hard look at some stereotypes, let me, and I know, and it's a difficult place to tread in society, because there's sometimes, no matter what is said, it can be twisted. And let me kind of walk out onto one of these for a moment. Even in the Christian world, the Christians can often have a negative view of followers of Islam, and I believe to really help that perspective, you need to look at life. You need to understand them. A book that I wholeheartedly suggest. There are books that I will read, and I'll say every believer needs to read this. One of them is Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. And I think a lot of believers might look at that and say, well, I don't have to read that. I already believe Jesus is the way. Now, you need to read it to understand the context and the background, and the fact that the author Qureshi, that when the stories he tells of his younger years, that when he got hurt and his mother took him to the hospital, and this is an Islamic family, but she's praying for him. We often think of that kindness and those kind of things as exclusive to us as believers, but there are things to understand about other people and other cultures, and to understand that God's heart for them and yearns for them. He doesn't look at them as a group of terrorists. He looks at them as people that he loves dearly. He looks at every race, every skin color, every culture, and even those that we can often, I've heard, even it comes out of the mouth of believers that our enemies. But as a believer, you don't have enemies. And now I understand that there are enemies of our nation that want to see our nation destroyed. I get that, and I understand that context. But for us as believers to label people our enemies, Jesus talked about that. Our enemies are people we're supposed to be praying for and loving. So when we need to be really careful with that, and we need to foster that in our kids. But it's so important for us to have it and take inventory of our hearts first. We need to get this. We need to live this. There are a lot of things we give lip service to, but do we truly respect the differences in people and love them unconditionally the way Jesus would? Or do we always have a condition? Yes, but, or yeah, but they all, no, that's not okay. That's not Jesus. That's not the man, the God come to earth in man form in a dark skinned, or let's say at least olive skinned body. That we have so westernized Christianity in so many ways. Let me give you another book that you have to read, in my opinion, is Seeing Jesus from the East. A beautiful book written about, again, that how much we often miss about Jesus and being a Christ follower because we don't understand the ancient context of the world that Christianity started in and that Jesus grew up in and all of those kinds of things. So respecting differences. And I know I'm talking more theoretical, and some of this I'm leaving it up to you to think of the ways that we do that. But read more with your kids. Look, children's books and other books of people of different skin colors who have done amazing things and been heroes in their own right, and that that you would incorporate people with differences in your family circles, in your social circles, so that your kids have that opportunity as well. And I know you can't always make that happen. I get that. I understand. And we're all on the same page when it comes to this. The closer the people of all races get to Christ and his cross, the closer they will get to one another. That's a great quote from Billy Graham, and I think most of you watching this would agree with that. But yet how that happens has to be them seeing Jesus through our lives. So I'm talking about two different main domains of differences. First of all, outside the family. How do your kids love and respect, honor outside of those outside of your family? Do they? Do you give them opportunity for that? Do they show love? Do they show respect? Is there a kindness that they're characterized by? And here's some things I want to give you for that. How do we help that happen? First of all, we have to examine our own perceptions, judgments, stereotypes that don't line up with God's love, God's grace, and the preciousness we must see in others. That doll I talked about in a session before, that we will love and people based on the preciousness that God sees in them. And so first is taking examination of our own perceptions and judgments. Truly, when I say taking inventory, I mean reading, I mean talking about it with others, I mean researching, praying and asking God and looking at Scripture and looking at the Scriptures I had on the previous slide and really internalizing them of that there is no favoritism with God. There's no picking and choosing between who he loves and cares for. Number two, foster healthy awareness of differences, which means that you might have to work more to do research and look past the stereotypes. And maybe that some of that joking, maybe some joking in your home that was very innocent is time to stop because it's not having a good effect on your kids. Having age-appropriate conversations about racism and other forms of dislike and unfairness based on one's part of a group of people. We can look at this in the Bible. You can look at it in history. You can look at it in today's society. And I'm not talking about just race. Of course, have those conversations, but just being associated with various groups and the way we kind of disparage them in our attitudes. And our kids pick up on that. And that's not Jesus. 5, emphasize the preciousness of every human being to God and Jesus. And Jesus' followers. Teach it and live it. So that's outside the family and differences inside the family. Now, we will have a session where I'm going to talk about more in depth differences inside the family. But I wanted to mention how personalities are such a beautiful thing in a family. And I know that you already know that, but respecting those differences and helping your children respect them is such an important task, because you might have the child who is more difficult to get along with. You might have the child who's maybe a pleasing personality, like the golden retriever up there, or maybe the a controlling personality who's like the the eagle there of all about control and dominance, or the lion as well, the king of the jungle. They think everyone should bow down to them, and maybe I'm stereotyping a little too much here at the close of our session. I don't want it to sound I'm not stereotyping, but I don't want it to sound disparaging about anyone in families. But the fact that there are different personalities, and that's a wonderful, beautiful thing. And sometimes we have to help our kids love their brothers and sisters and appreciate those differences, and to set our kids up for success in front of each other because of those differences. The child who might not be good at math and other things, that you're going to do things that help him set up for success. I heard one guy say, your child might not be real great one of your kids might not be great in school, and they might not get math and science and those kinds of things, but man, they're really good with handy things, and they're great with a screwdriver. And so before they come home from school, you're going to go around the house and you're going to loosen a whole bunch of screws, and you're going to say, man, I think you should check the screws in this house, because you're going to help them feel successful and understand that their personality, they like to touch things and do things, and to be that kind of parent and help your kids kind of embrace that as well. Well, this was our third part in talking about showing love through respect, kindness, and honor. We have one more part that's coming up next week, so I hope you will join in. There are many parts, many sessions after that, though, for the rest of this series. Thanks again for being a part of it, and I will hopefully see you next week.